Novalee. Welcome to the Genetic Genius. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yay. So before we dive deep into the aspects of our conversation with numerology, which I'm super excited about, I'd love for you to just kind of introduce yourself to our listeners, just talk about who you are, your passion, what you're doing right now on the planet.
Yeah. So my name is Novalee Wilder. I'm a numerologist and a writer. I'm originally from Denmark. That's a little country in Scandinavia, northern part of Europe. I moved to the US back in 2014. I have a background as an actress and acting in the theater. And then I met numerology, or numerology found me in 2015, and that like really changed the trajectory of my life because I was very firmly in the acting track. That was my dream. It's always been my dream. I had tried to do other things, but it was just like I wanted to be in the theater. And then after my own name change and diving into numerology, a way more like spiritual path kind of opened for me. I worked on a lot of things and a lot of things fell into place. That's also sometimes how life happens, that you decide to do something and you fight the dragons and you climb the mountains and you go there, and other times things just fall into place and you go in a different direction. Yeah, so I've worked as a professional numerologist for like 3 or 4 years now. If you told me 10 years ago that I was going to help people change their names and name their businesses and teach them about numbers, I would be like, math was never my favorite subject. I would be like, why would I be doing that? Yeah, but it has kind of unfolded for me. And it's my passion. And it's one of those things that like sometimes like many people do, we are passionate about something, but we also get tired and we're like, why am I thinking about making this better? Like, why am I thinking about this thing all the time? It'd be so easy if I could just do something that was less challenging, that didn't ask me to grow all the time, that didn't ask me to, I don't know, get out of my comfort zone repeatedly. But it's just a path, at least for right now. Like numerology is more than just a passion. It has helped me so much, and it helps the people that I work with, and I'm like, okay, apparently this is what I need to be doing.
That's great. Sometimes we don't know what's going to fall into our lap, right?
No. And we think like, oh, it can only be this one way. And then it turns out it can be many different ways.
That's right. So let's dive down into numerology. So basically, like let's start with the basics, like the roots.
Yes.
The root numbers. What is numerology, first of all? Like, let's just start there.
Yeah. So numerology is the original kind of personality system. If you have ever taken any kind of personality test, or if you're into the more spiritual part, which is astrology, but like Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, yeah, human design, like, I mean, throw anything at me and I will tell you that it all boils down to those first 9 numbers or 9 archetypes or energies, and that everything is just layered on top of that. And the kind of numerology that I do and work with is called Chaldean numerology, because we can chase it back to the Chaldeans around 3,000 years ago. But, many books haven't survived. I'm pretty sure we could trace it even further back. Right. And it's like the sister of astrology. Like it fits like that. So in numerology, we work with numbers from 1 to 9 when we talk about people, and numbers from 1 to 52 when we talk about names. And when we look at people, we try to understand the energy behind them. Just like if you work with astrology, you're like, oh, you're such a Leo or a Gemini or whatever. But what you are describing with a zodiac sign is the same as describing the energy behind the number. And we always reduce things to the digit sum. So you can't be a number 22. you would be a 4. So no matter what birthday we are born on, what year we are born in, we would always reduce the number to understand, okay, you're born on a 15 day. That makes you a 6. That tells us something about your personality, your life lessons, gifts, and challenges, and how you respond to the world. And in that way, it can be a little more precise than astrology, because if you're born into a certain 30 days, then you're a Leo,
Right.
or Gemini, whatever. But in those 30 days, the numbers repeat themselves many times. So you could be a 1 and a Leo, a 2 and a Leo, and so on and so forth. So what I do is I help people, I remind them of those energies. And usually people go like, yes, that's true. That's who I am. But I have so much trauma, challenge, opinions pinned on me and that energy. Because we are only wounded around who we truly are. We're not really wounded on any other level. Like usually when people say something negative about our true energy, it really hurts. But if people say something random that doesn't really apply to the energy we have, it kind of slides off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. And so, wow, it's a really old ancient system. 3,000
Yes.
years ago is a really long time ago. It's hard to even fathom really how far ago that was. And so you said that in regards to the date, or is it when you're talking about a person's personality, is it just the day they're born, or is it the whole, like the month, the day, and the year, all like all those numbers combined together?
It's facets of a diamond in a sense, because a person is of course a lot more than just one number. So we
Right.
look at the day, and the day tells us like the most important, kind of who you're here to be, you know, who you're here to be. And then we also look at the zodiac sign, and we also look at the year, because everyone born in the same year has a certain connection to the same energy. And that second energy, the yearly energy, tells us something about the internal monologue and the internal experience. And sometimes people retreat a little bit into that experience because it's challenging to be ourselves. It's just challenging. So I look at all the numbers to kind of understand all the energies in play, but I try to remind people, or like push them a little bit into say like, this is what you want to do anyway. This is what you're good at anyway. This is probably what you don't think is anything important. Like you don't think it's so special. We don't really think we are so special.
We
But
don't.
it is special, you know. Yeah, I feel like many people think that some of their gifts are something that, oh, I guess everyone can do this. And I'm like, no, not everyone can do that. Not everyone is that particular combination of colors or energies. So they can't all do, or if I'm talking like some of the numbers have leadership as part of their life lesson. I mean, we can all be leaders,
Right.
but if you have leadership as part of your life lesson, you need to go do that, because if you don't do that, you're going to micromanage your friendships, you're going to micromanage your family. It's a lot easier to just be like, okay, go for that management position.
Right.
Go get a little bit higher, get some underlings, and not like in a negative way, but you were born to rule. Especially if I'm talking to women, because the numbers don't really care.
Right.
They don't care if you're born a woman on a day that says that you have to follow and achieve like leadership in your lifetime. But you will be called bossy and bitchy and like all, like, you know, people do put those labels on people, and sometimes it's really helpful to hear, oh, I am supposed to do this. I am supposed to go get what I want. And that does mean that, you know, the haters are going to hate, or like there are some people who are going to have an opinion about it, especially if you're born in a female form.
Interesting. So interesting. I love how there's all these different aspects of the numerology. So when do you have that revelation, right, about your personal life? How do you start to kind of dive deeper into that? So you've given like the basics, like you said, there's like a facets, like a diamond. How does that, when does it, I guess, reveal that kind of like deeper aspect to dive into?
So I usually explain to people that we all live on a spectrum, no matter what kind of also like personality system or whatever you dive into of these like categories or boxes we like to put people into. And they should be freeing, they should not be restricting, but it's also understanding, okay, say I have leadership, like let's just pick that. Like leadership is one of my life goals, lessons, it's one of my challenges. I will forever in my life look at other leaders and go like, that's not how you should be doing it. You should be doing it differently. Like forever I will be triggered. So for me, I was born on a day that adds up to 1, and my leadership patterns have a lot to do with integrity. And the lowest end of my spectrum is kind of the proofreader energy. That instead of going to do stuff myself, I will be that person. I haven't done it more than like a few times in my life, but when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, you did that. You know, responding to an email pointing out how many spelling mistakes there were in it. Or, you know, like spending my time dismantling something and going like, this is how it should be done better. Instead of just stepping out of the critique and like that proofreader mindset and going, let me go create something. Because when I get tired of people stealing my ideas or copying something or critique, like when I get in critique mode, I'm like, oh, I am just in the lowest end of my own spectrum. Like I'm operating down here. I need to step out of this. I need to stop consuming other people's content.
That makes total sense.
Go create my own. So sometimes it's also that like on the scale of feeling shitty to feeling amazing. Like I know that if I'm operating down in the proofreader spectrum, critiquing everyone else, finding the fault with that, thinking that's not how you should lead, you're failing as a teacher. Like when I'm down there, that's a wake-up call for me. I thought before that was just like part of who I was, and now I know that no, that's part of the lowest end of my spectrum. And I really need to do everything I can to get to the higher end
that
for
makes total
everyone's
sense.
sake.
So it sounds like it gives you an awareness like on your path of who you can be the best of yourself in with the keys, so you kind of like know when you're stepping out of numerical alignment.
And also just like it's normal. Like we all spend time down in our lower spectrum, and it's not like, oh, I'm a bad person, I need to rid myself of this energy, I need to, I don't know, do EFT tapping, like I need to clear it. It's like no, it's just part of the spectrum, it's part of who I am. Like also some forgiveness about like we are just who we are, and it's okay to have times where we're not our best.
And then so with that, how do you then take that information to have that enrichment in your life start to happen? So you're like, okay, I've been given, you know, these particular facets, and then I know this spectrum about where it can be, and just gonna have that self-forgiveness and kind of move through it. But then how can you take that information and then use it to advance, so to speak, to help you to kind of move into that upper level spectrum and live in there? Because that sounds more fun.
So 2 things. One thing is like, I find that when I talk to my clients about it, just talking about it gives them permission. Sometimes it's just like shining a light gives them permission to go and do and be, and also understanding how other people react to their energy. Why they are attracted, why they are repelled, why there are certain patterns in their friendships, in their family, in their romantic relationships. Like if I'm in very low energy, like using myself as an example, I will find projects instead of, you know, project people, project friendships, project whatever, instead of, I mean, and it's a way of playing small. It's a way of playing small to be in the low end. So getting permission by hearing it is usually, or reading about it is usually really helpful. And then on a spiritual level, in the kind of numerology that I practice, our names also create a kind of energetic imprint or a kind of filter on
Mhm.
how we express ourselves. So
Mm.
learning about what kind of energy does my name hold, and
Mhm.
how does that filter my energy.
Right.
So maybe I'm not just often in the lower end of my spectrum. Part of my name might also be attracting
Mm.
certain experience. It might be
Mhm.
amplifying parts of me or suppressing parts of me. And I find that people understand this way more now because we all understand what a filter is. And
Right.
we understand that, like, oh, I am seeing this person through my filter, or like I
Mm.
am like this person is sending out this vibe, or like putting this thing on themselves. So
Mhm.
understanding our filters, and I mean, like, in turn, this is not for everyone, but changing your name can be part of changing those filters, or just
Mhm.
tuning them
Right.
can be helpful, because then some of the things that we think we are, we find out, oh, that's just a filter, kind of like
Mm.
a family story.
Right.
Family stories are also in our names. So, like,
Mm.
when you inherit a name or you
Mhm.
marry into a name, many women take their husband's last names when they marry, and they have trouble getting rid of them when they
Mm.
get divorced. When
Right.
we do change our name, we do buy, or like we get into a story that runs in that family.
Mm.
So that's the extra layer sometimes. Just hearing about the name vibrations, the name filters in play is also like, oh, okay. I mean, there's just so much permission, there's so much freedom in like knowing, like,
Mhm.
oh, it's not just me, or it's not all me. Like, I can change this part of me.
Mm.
Um, I can release this pattern.
Mm.
Or also like just understand the unconscious part of like, oh, I always do this. And part of it is unconscious. Now I'm gonna make it conscious, so it's gonna be way easier to deal with. Because I see that, like, I see sometimes when people have maybe very challenging name vibrations,
Mm.
everyone looks for tools, so they will find tools to counteract that energy, and they might become experts in dealing with that kind of energy, and
Yeah.
they start teaching other people. And then is that thing, like, when we have experienced it and we've gone through it, it's a lot easier to appeal and help other people with that. And
Mm.
then sometimes with a name change, we can say, well, do you want to keep doing that and
Right.
having to apply that tool every day, or do you want to try something different?
Interesting. So really liked what you said about that, that self-forgiveness piece, or that self-acceptance
Mhm.
piece. So that's really powerful about numerology, is that being able to understand that you're connected to, a bigger aspect of itself, of yourself. It sounds like you're saying, just, and being able to be like, okay, well, this is kind of like the genetics, the cellular makeup of myself with, as far as numerology. And, it's okay if I'm stepping out of that box, or acting a different way, because that self, if I'm accepting that understanding my true makeup, then it's easier to have the vision of what I look like. Is that kind of
Yeah, yeah. And
Mhm.
also, like, forgiveness may be about or around family members.
Mm,
Sometimes, I mean, I find the more I understand people's base numbers, and that's the birth date,
mhm,
the more I can let them be that,
mm,
and be like, oh, okay, you are trying to teach me or tell me something through your own filters
mhm.
and your own base number. And we don't share that. Like, I don't have the same base number, I don't have the same filters. I don't want the life you have.
Mm.
So it's okay. You can still tell me how you would do things. And I can, instead of being like, why are you telling me how to live my life?
Right.
My, like, instead of going in teenage brain mode and
Right.
just being like Mrs. Opposite, I can be like, okay, that's your reality. It's how you
Mm,
lived your life. It's the filter you see. You think, like, I had this conversation with my dad where he was like, well, I had to figure that out on my own about
mm,
certain things, and also
yeah.
with money. And I thought, well, if I was someone's parent and I had to figure that stuff out on my own, I would want to teach my kid about,
Mm,
like, I
right.
wouldn't wait until they got in debt and be like, well, you got yourself into that mess. I would want to help them. And I was
Right.
like, it's interesting that his filter, and we can also call it his generation, we can call it lots of
Right.
things.
Mhm.
We can say, oh, that's just how they think. But to me, I'm like, okay, that filter, no, no, no. I am not doing that. I'm not putting it on myself. I feel compassion for him thinking that life has to be that way.
Right.
That you have to get deep into trouble before you get it. Like, it's really okay to get a shortcut. Like, it's
Right.
really okay to help people and let them know
Yeah.
this is something I struggled with, for you not to have the same experience.
Right.
Let
We
me
don't
just
have to
tell you about
suffer.
how to make a budget or something like
Yeah.
that.
It's
Yeah.
not why we're here on the planet to suffer. We're here to have a much more fun life than that. So, does numerology then help also with health and well-being? So it sounds like, there's lots of physical, like emotional or personality aspects, but how about from a health perspective?
Yeah. So based on people's base number, there are certain health aspects that often show up.
Mm,
Like, people born on a 9 day, meaning they're born on the 9th or the 18th or the 27th, they are connected to Mars energy, they're connected to a zodiac sign, and so on and so forth. And they often have issues with their head. So often when I
mm.
talk to them, I'm like, remember the helmet when you bike. Or I see that, like, often when certain things show up in their numeroscope, which is kind of like a horoscope where we
Right.
overlay the birthday with the names, we see
Mm,
there might be certain triggers where we're like, if something shows up, get it checked out. I'm not saying that your name is going to make you sick, but this
right.
points to maybe trouble in one area of your body.
Mm. So, like, as a
So
prevention
for certain,
standpoint.
yeah, like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or just like, I mean, I'm a reader of people's charts. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I can make a very educated guess
Right.
about where this person's trouble might show up based on
Mm,
their names and their base number,
mhm.
because that's just something that this base number is prone to.
Right.
Like, people born on a 2 day or a 6 day might have more issues with, because one of their life lessons has to do with relationships. So there are
Mm-hmm.
certain issues about codependency
Mm-hmm.
or the sweet things in life. So
Mm-hmm.
something like issues with the sugar, or like
Mm,
overindulging in things
mhm,
because they so want to merge with people.
mhm.
And when we are not allowed, then we have to fill the hole with something. And
Right.
some of the more socially acceptable ways of filling the void inside is like eating things
Mhm.
or doing whatever thing in excess, even if it's like binge watching Netflix to kind of go on an emotional high with people, because we can't
Right.
go on that emotional journey with whoever we actually want to do it with. So
So
sometimes, like, that's also like, again, a pattern. Like, this is
right.
your low point. This
Mm,
is what you do when you feel shitty.
right.
How can you do something that's just slightly better? You know,
Mhm.
instead of eating the cake by yourself, inviting a friend over to eat the cake with them. Like, because what
Right.
you're really craving is human connection.
Right, emotional
Or I had a
connection.
conversation with someone who was like, I isolate a lot. And I was like, yeah,
Mm,
that's a part of your base number.
mm.
Like, there's like a hermit
Yeah,
quality, and
right.
that's okay. You need like long times to yourself.
Mhm.
Then you need to plan to come out. Like, give yourself an exit strategy, being like, it's okay if I, just plan an outing in a couple of
Right.
days. So you know that it's okay if you spend a lot of time with yourself or need a lot of alone time, but like, plan to
Mm,
come out of the cave
right, don't
instead of
hermitize
just,
yourself.
yeah,
Is that a word,
yeah, if
hermitize?
that's a pattern.
I just made it up if it's
Yeah, I don't know. But it's
a
definitely something that people can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. So what about, so it sounds like there's specific kind of maybe areas of the body that can be connected to different aspects. Are there specific organs as well that, like, like the thyroid or, the cardiac system or the brain? Are there specific organs
There
themselves that are
are. Yeah.
related? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the nine, but like the head and the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and often like the blood system, or just, yeah, blood. And I find that, like, yeah, I mean, like diabetes for the twos and the sixes. There are also certain things, I mean, for the fives, five energy is connected to Mercury, the zodiac signs of Virgo and Gemini, and that's the nervous system
Mm,
also. So like, there is because Mercury is the planet and the god of communication.
Right.
So like that's one, if you are 5, meaning you're born on the 5th, the 14th, or the 23rd, then the theme is communication and like sales and exchange and money, because money is also communication. So that's a life theme of communicating and being understood, being in contact with a lot of people, which must be challenging right now, like having that feeling like I need to meet people, and also being charged in the company of other people. But it also leads to like maybe lack of grounding, maybe having that feeling of like I can't go home because the best party is coming up, like that energy of like, oh, like I shouldn't go home, I will miss out on something. They can have a hard time like just tuning off, shutting down, like taking a nap. And like when I have people who have children in session with me or naming sessions, I say like, well, one of your jobs as a parent is to let them know that they're not missing out on anything. You have to be the frame that says we are leaving in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and like let them know that it's okay. You know, like so they don't keep chasing that. Because it also becomes an unconscious pattern of like, we might not know why we're staying at the party. We just have that feeling of like, I will miss out on something if I don't do it.
Totally.
And we might
I don't want to leave.
overindulge, you know, like burn through a relationship, because instead of like going home and giving yourself like some space and this person time to come up with new subjects to talk about, we will just be constantly for like a period of time, and then you burn through that relationship, and you have to then move on to the next thing because there is a lack of grounding. So like some of these things can also be helpful for a parent to know, like, okay, this is one of my child's patterns, and instead of going like, why do you do this, go like, how can I help you understand the pattern early on.
And so one interesting thing you said there too was about helping parents with a name. So is that something that you work with? Oh, that's so cute. I love that.
Or I don't name them.
But you help with the naming.
Yeah. I mean, behind every letter is a number. So I just figure out what is the number that needs to be behind this name, and I then give them name lists with hundreds of names, and then they pick the name.
Oh, how interesting.
But yes, I am part of the process.
The naming diva. I love it.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. And so let's kind of shift into the naming, because I think we're moving down that road anyway. So numerology isn't just part of your birth date, but it also has a lot to do with names, which you mentioned before. And what's the distance that it goes back into our past life history? So there's a couple questions I have there, of course. So one is like, when your given name, if it was someone that was a previous ancestor, do you have a tie to them with that specific numerology? And then also when you're in that family lineage, well, let's just answer that question first, then I'll move on. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many questions.
So parents often pass on more than a last name. So last names travel in families. And sometimes we do pass on like, you know, a great aunt or a grandmother, grandfather, like certain names, and people are like something the third or something the fourth. That happens too. But people also do pass, like they don't even know it's the same. They find a new name, but it's the same vibration. I see that. Like we can't pass on what we don't know. It just feels wrong. We will pass on what we know. So even if we pick a different name, like something that's not in the family, it might be the same vibration that we carry. And I have tested this out. I have like, you know, once in a while, I will have people who say like, oh, can you just give me a great name? Or like a great name vibration. And even if and that's not quite how it works. Like I can't just give you one puzzle. It's like helping people find a harmonious or supportive name usually means that I have to look at everything.
It's not just
like I can't just be like, this is great for everyone. Like one name vibration is not great for everyone. But when I have caved and given them like name lists with something that I was like, this is gonna probably work, I will find that they will say, none of these names are good. And I'm like, they're like, 300 names on this list. You're telling me that not one of them would work as a middle name or something?
Yeah.
And then they will go pick the vibration they carry.
Right. Oh, that's so
And that's also
interesting.
why, like, I mean, that's why, like, as a numerologist, I also know that, like, I wouldn't trust myself to name something without looking at the system I use. Like, because I would know that I would pass on what I know,
Mm-hmm.
and say I had a pet or a cat
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, like a child or a business, I would know that I would pass on what I know, but it might not fit their base number. It might not fit
Right.
the life they are supposed to live.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's really, I mean, these things travel in the family
Mm-hmm.
and they also intensify. So when a lot of people from the same family are in the same room and they all carry the same vibration, that
Mm-hmm.
intensifies that aspect. So
Right.
sometimes when people say, like, I can totally hang out with my family when we're like a few people, but I hate going to family gatherings because it just gets out of control. Like whatever thing like kind of
Right.
gets out of control is just overwhelming. I'm like, I understand. I
Mm-hmm.
understand how a lot of that energy in the room can just be kind of overwhelming. And
Mm-hmm.
that can come from like, and it's usually, the more powerful and maybe masculine vibrations that win here. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if it's like anger issues or aggression,
Mm.
and that kind of energy will look different in different people. Some
Right.
people shut down, some people get mean, some
Mm.
people get physical, some people
Right.
decide like, I am not allowed to feel this.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else has the monopoly on anger in my
Right.
family, and it's
Yeah.
not me. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to internalize the voice.
Mm.
Then it's hard to go to that family gathering where
Right.
maybe a lot of that more aggressive energy is present, because you're like, when I come home, I'm going to like have that voice in my head of
Mm.
my ranting
Right.
mother,
The inner
or
rant. Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Not a fun way to end the
yeah,
party.
that energy.
Yeah.
And also, but also in good ways. Like I do see that lucky families of people who have like certain life mottos,
Right.
their life motto is in one of their names. I see
Yeah.
that, like, that people will pass on that happy-go-lucky energy, or
Mm-hmm.
themes about money and also keeping money in the family. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I
Right.
get it. Like, this has
Yeah.
never been a problem for you because
Right.
it's part of your name. So
Mm-hmm.
for 20, 30, 40 years, this name vibration has been like, money is easy, money is easy, money is easy. That
Mm-hmm.
might not make you a millionaire, but it does influence your mindset maybe
Mm-hmm.
in that area. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. I love that. So it is just so interesting that when you're in that family dynamic, that could be totally changed because of your name and never like associated with that. And I could see how that could definitely make a vibrational change because, sometimes, like you said, you can be with your family and other times like, I think I need to have a break. And so is that the name and the numerology, how is that connected, or is it connected to our genetic DNA? Is there like, an imprint of that's like within us, or what can, I'm trying to ask, like, is it, if we're looking at our genetic pattern vibrationally, is that like imprinted on the vibration of our DNA, having that, name and numerology imprint?
I think there are certain things where I see very young kids, like babies, where I'm like, how can this disease or how can this challenge show up so early in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if there are certain um, red flags
Mm-hmm.
showing up, it
Mm-hmm.
usually takes a long time before they really manifest. So sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when they show up very early, this is karmic, you can look at
Mm-hmm.
certain karmic connections back in time. You can look at, we might have a karmic contract with
Mm-hmm.
someone in this lifetime, might be our mom.
Mm-hmm.
Often like generational, where the grandparents will have a specific connection to a grandchild or something like that. And we can see like, oh, you came back to have this experience, and
Mm,
certain base numbers and years we can look at like, is this the first time you're trying this or the third time? When you
Mm-hmm.
get to the third time of trying a specific constellation or like a specific crystal,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
specific numbers, then it's like, okay, this is the third time, you're going to get to it faster.
Yeah,
You're
that
going to
makes
get
sense.
to whatever the lesson is faster. You're not going to wake up at 60 and be like, oh, wait a minute, there was something I needed to do. It
Right.
will often show up earlier. And that is when we also see people who might have that like old soul energy, and it might
Mm-hmm.
be that they realize early, even in their teenage years, like, I don't have time to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to mess around and do this. It's stupid. I tried it once. It didn't feel good. I realized if I go down this path, I'm going to spend a lot of time hanging
Mm-hmm.
out with, like, like they might feel very outside of the group
Mm-hmm.
because they're not just making a choice to be different. They
Right.
are different. So sometimes that pattern, because like in numerology with name changes, we can definitely support people to be more themselves, but we can't turn back time.
Right. That makes
So
sense.
when people come and have certain, like, say a name change can help certain challenges, like patterns of tension in the body,
Mm.
patterns of diseases, of infection in the body.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't undo cancer. Like
Right.
we can stop where it might have been going, and I'm not making any claims here, but like the energy
Right.
can stop, but we can't turn back time. So sometimes when people have very early in their life big health scares or challenges,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, really interesting that you have to go through your third bout of cancer before you
Mm.
turn 20.
Right. Yeah, that's
That's not just a name, that's not just a base number. That might be
right.
like, it's that thing like, if we decided to learn about patience, we're going to be presented moments where we need to be patient, and
Mm.
it's going to be challenging to be patient.
Right. Yeah, that
We're
makes
not going to
sense.
just get it delivered,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Right.
And sometimes when I look at the patterns of my life, especially like my mom needed me to be the grown up. And
Mm-hmm.
when I look at the patterns, even if I have a tough time sometimes forgiving it, when I
Mm-hmm.
look at the patterns, I can see the contract that said, I took care of you, now you take care of me.
Right. Yeah.
Even if you're born into a constellation, you
Mm-hmm.
should not be taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like sometimes when we take a step back and we see like more of the soul plan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh, okay, I understand why this task was there. But in
Right.
our human bodies, all the challenges are still there. The trauma, the like, why were you not what I needed? But for
Mm.
example, if I need to learn certain things, then I need someone to not be there when I need them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I like that whole kind of like picture of different aspects of, how things kind of move and shape within the
Yeah.
DNA and with the vibration. And, we're, it's interesting that I like what you said too about how when we have had something that we're living through over and over again, and that could be us or our family heritage, we learn how much more quickly we can do it in this lifetime. We're like, okay, I think I've had that lesson over and over again. Let's just get through
Yeah. And then that's
it.
also what I see when people come to me and they want to, and they don't know, might not even know why. Maybe they have problems with their names, but they just come like, they're like, I think I should talk to you.
Mm,
What I see is the soul going, I'm done. Like,
mm,
I got the lesson.
right.
Can we change it up this time?
Right.
Or like,
Yeah.
like it's okay to be done with a lesson. I
Mhm.
have heard someone who's like, well, shouldn't you just deal with what you've been given? And then I'm like, yes, if you can't change it. But names can be changed. And sometimes people are like, oh, you cut the cord to an ancestor. I'm like, women cut the cords to ancestors all the time because we do take our husband's name. So like everyone in my like giving people permission to do
Mm,
whatever they want.
mhm.
Color your hair, move to a new city, change your name. You don't owe anyone to be an old version of yourself.
I love that. Yeah. That's great. And what happens if you do have your family has changed name? Like, say for 200 years, they were X name, and then now they're moving, they decide to completely change it or just change the spelling of the name. How does that shift the family dynamic? Like, for instance, could be someone who came into the United States from, and had to change their name when they came in
Yeah,
because, Ellis
there's a
Island
lot of
people couldn't
that.
understand.
Yeah, I see like people find, our front of mind reason to do something. It's
Hmm.
usually very logical. Okay,
Hmm.
I'm immigrating to this country. I want to make my name more like the Jews traveling through Germany. Everything
Hmm.
was Germanized. I don't know what the word
Right.
is. Became more English, and like people shorten things. There's also a reason why everyone is named Smith, because there are
Right.
so many people who were goldsmiths and silversmiths and
Right.
like different kinds of smiths. That's why we have so many of them. Like when you dig into why a name is in the family, like why are so many Black people in the US named after the founding fathers? Well,
Mm.
because they could take a pick from a very short list. They were freed.
Mhm.
And like there are certain patterns in how a name came to be. Like sometimes people are like, oh, aren't your dad sad that you don't have his last name anymore? I'm like, he changed his name and the spelling from his father because he's like, no one can spell this. Like that was the story. I find that it's in like everyone has a story with their name.
Right.
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing and patterns, and also like different countries have different rules. Like in
Right.
France, you can't really change your name.
Mm.
You don't even change your name when you get married. You
Mm.
still forever that
That
name.
name.
and
Mhm.
and that says something about the energy. Like in Norway, you can change your name every 10 years. So if you got married and then divorced, then you still have to carry that name
Right. For eternity.
until you're out of that 10-year period. Like some of these
Right.
patterns are just really interesting. But yes, when you trace it back, I can see that everything in a family changes. For
Mm.
example, when they change the last name or if
Mhm.
they try to introduce something. But often people will pick the same vibration. They will
Mm.
spell it differently or
Right.
something, cut something off, and
Yeah.
they will get another aspect of that vibration.
So
Or if they
interesting.
change the last name, they
Mhm.
then start naming, like the first names start having the old vibration.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're still keeping that family vibration of the name in some aspect,
Yeah.
even if it like changes spelling, and oh, so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen the patterns of like women
Mhm.
getting married multiple times and they keep
Right.
marrying into the same energy. Where I'm like, every
Mm.
single husband, or I mean, this also goes for men, like all the
Right.
women you find have the same energy.
Right. The same vibration. Yeah, because
Yeah.
attracted to the same person. And so then, okay, that's a great question and segue. How do you change that? Okay, you have this pattern and you recognize the
Hmm.
pattern. So how do you change that vibrational pattern? Like, okay, I need to pick someone that's this, like look for all the people that have that vibration pattern within their name or within their number. You're like, I'm only going to date people with a name number 4.
Yeah, I mean that's tough. Sometimes realizing, oh, I have this pattern
Hmm.
is enough. Like I have this pattern, and this goes like beyond numerology. Like, oh, I'm interested in unavailable people. Oh, I'm interested in people who are kind of like my dad but not quite, or kind of like my mom but not quite, or this
Right.
kind of pattern. Like I need projects, or I need like whatever. We can see that pattern with name changes. We can get rid of some of those filters, so we're
Mm,
just not as attracted. I
right.
find that one of the interesting ones is like one of the little drama triangle
Hmm.
theme vibrations that really invite in that there's always a fire to put out energy.
Right. The
There's
drama,
always a
drama.
fire, always yeah, there's always something. And if you're
Mm,
not putting out your own fires, you're putting out other people's fires. And if there is no fire, you will subconsciously create one.
mm.
You will know how to word a question or
Right.
something to make
To create a
someone
fire.
else, yeah, go off.
Right. Yeah.
That's a lovely energy to be rid of. And then it takes usually a little bit of time for the brain to be like, wait, now I have all this time. This doesn't feel quite normal.
Mhm.
You know, it's like coming out of your house and the sky has a slightly different blue color, and you're like, wait, something feels different.
Right. It's a
Like the
little bit
time it
off.
takes us, yeah, the time it takes us to like energetically, things can shift super quickly. But our
Mm,
brain is so wired to
right.
look for certain patterns
Yeah.
that unlearning that part can take a little while.
Right, totally. Yeah, it's like with
Yeah.
any type of pattern that our brain recognizes, right? Whether it's personality or health, it's like, okay, I'm going to change this. It takes me a little bit of time to figure out the new thing. You don't want to overwhelm the brain. Like all of a sudden, overnight, everything changes.
Yeah. And sometimes it is that easy, and other times it's
Mhm.
like, I'm still looking for fires.
Right. How
That's
resistant we
silly.
are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we also have to have that, like, I mean, our nervous system has to be calmed down. Like in my current relationship, I am married to him. And I realized like over time, I was like, oh, I have an expectation of him doing something. And over time, I can tell that he is never going to do, like, that's not
Mhm.
him. I just still have that expectation of a
Mhm.
partner,
Right.
of maybe not being able to trust them, or them being able to, like, them want to fight. I'm like, oh, I thought,
Mm.
like, I mean, I had to reprogram my brain where I was like, the patterns I have from my childhood is that if you love someone, you yell at them.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
I don't want to yell at people, and I
Right.
don't want people to yell at me.
Right.
But I still have that, like, the duck, you know, like where I duck. Like I
Yeah.
still have the energy where I'm like, ooh, I want to get out of your
Right.
way.
Out of your way because you're
Well,
going to yell at
it
me.
is, yeah, it's not happening, and it has
Mhm.
never happened in my
Right.
current relationship. Um, but like the pattern is still like unwinding now
Still
when he gets
ingrained in
into it,
there.
where I'm like, okay, it's okay if my nervous system takes a long time to calm down on that. But it's
Hmm.
also a new, like, I've made the deal. No one is going to yell at me again.
Right.
Like, I've also made that deal with myself. Like, I'm not interested in that kind of relationship with
Hmm.
anyone at any point.
Right.
So, like, I am rewiring my brain.
Mm.
The vibration in my numeroscope, in my name, is
Hmm.
not inviting in anyone yelling at me.
Yeah.
It does take time to calm down a system that has been overdrive.
Right. Oh, totally. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And, it does take time for us to be able to, one, recognize that's part of it too. And I think that's what the fascinating part about numerology is, that it allows you to see that kind of like wider scope of recognition. Like, okay,
Mhm.
I can recognize this pattern within myself. Now I can choose to accept the pattern. Then I can let go of the resistance and then I can move on. It's like the little stages of working through. I'd love for us to talk just as we're finishing up today about kind of how your life changed when you found out kind of like about numerology, about your name, and then like what was the big shift for you, the aha moment, so to speak.
So, I mean, not that I changed my name on a whim, but I am known to go for it. I was like, if this works, like, just go big. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes it's like you don't know if you actually, if you don't know if it works if you don't really invest in it. So
Right.
it's like, I'm just gonna do it. And if it doesn't work, I can always change it back. I think I knew in the back of my mind when I picked a new name, and I really love the name. I love
Yeah.
the name Novalee Wilder. I'm like, it's pretty, it's me, I
Yeah,
love
it's
it, people
beautiful.
like stuff like that. I knew that I was probably not going back. And then I had these synchronicities happen.
Hmm.
And some of them were that thing you've worked on for a long time. I don't care what it is in your life. That thing you've worked on for a long time. You
Right.
worked on it, you sat on it, you did a course on it, you tapped on it, you
Everything.
bought a supplement for it, like, you know, that thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or you might have like just decided it's not for me. It's never
Right.
gonna happen. It's not for me. And
Mhm.
one of those things for me were love. I was like, it's just, I don't know. I'm hurt people, and I
Mm.
just know it's never gonna work, and I'm always gonna be guarded, and blah blah blah. I had all these things.
Yeah.
And after my name change, I just had such a like instinctual, intuitive pull to really sit with love.
Mm.
Sit and be like, what is it? Not like sometimes we think, oh, like I do for sure, like I want to manifest money, I want to manifest
Mhm.
whatever, like I want to work on this, and we follow like a recipe, like whatever, do this
Right.
thing, put this in your wallet, chant this mantra, blah blah blah.
Right.
We do it unconsciously.
Hmm.
We're so focused on, let me just do what the recipe says, instead of focusing on like, I actually really want to bake a cake or something. And I really sat and was very, very present with myself and feeling into what is love and what is love not. So it was very much like a rock bottom moment of like really questioning, like, what have I connected to love? Like, what are the patterns that I've had where I'm like, this is love, where now I know that is not love. I
Hmm.
really got really intentional about like writing it down and really feeling into, this is what I want if I could have it.
Hmm.
It's not what it looks like, it is what it feels like. And I mean, the first time I kissed my husband, I was like, oh shit, I want to marry him. And I've never felt that way about anyone ever. And I've been in love before. And I was like, oh, this is like, I don't think my name change unlocked lots of things. Like, we won a green card, I got a book deal, I got money,
Mm.
like lots of really good
Yeah.
external things happened.
Hmm.
But for me, the internal shift of really being super honest with myself
Mm.
and calling myself on my bullshit and really being like, I am now no longer barricading this door in
Mm.
my life,
Yeah.
meant that the guy who had decided to stand outside the door was like, hey, how you doing? And I
Right.
was
Can
like,
I come
oh
in
shit,
now?
you were, yeah. And that was it, completely different than any other relationships I've ever been in.
Mm.
And it was really, like, I am beyond grateful. I also know, like, looking into our patterns, I can see we have a soul contract, and I can see we were meant to find each other, and I can
Right.
see a lot of those patterns. But for me, the name change, I can like, there was no possibility of me doing that before. I would never
Mm.
have sat down with love, you know,
Right. Yeah.
had a conversation with
Mhm. With yourself.
myself and with love.
Yeah.
If I hadn't done that, I would have maybe kept doing the recipes. I would kept being like, yeah, maybe I want to.
Right. Try a little this salt or
Yeah, I would have
sugar or
been like,
whatever.
it would have been surface level. And I
Right.
think for anyone with anything, it is scary sometimes to be that
Hmm.
honest, to be like, I associate this experience, and it's a horrible experience, with
Mm.
something I actually want. Or like, when people have like, I mean, people who hate rich people, but they also want money. I'm like, you're never gonna get it.
Right. No, it
Because if
can't
you think rich
happen.
people are assholes, you don't want to be an asshole. Of course you don't. So you're
Right.
just gonna keep that money away. Keep it
Right.
away.
Yeah.
Never
Create a
make
barrier.
yourself,
Hmm.
yeah, whether it's your parents, like I had the conversation with my dad where I was like, why did you never get a cleaner? You have such a huge house. He was like, we are not gonna be the people who have cleaners. And it was just implicit, like I would
Right.
really today want a cleaner.
Yeah.
But it was just implicit. We are not those people. And if you decided you're not that kind of person who
Right.
gets really real
Yeah.
with some of those things, then it's very hard to get it.
Right. Yeah.
And I find that too. Like sometimes when people are like, why do I keep attracting these people? I'm like, you gotta be really honest with yourself. You really gotta
Right.
sit with and be really honest about like, what is the pattern? Why do I think that this is it? Why do I have
Right.
to put up with this
Hmm.
to get any semblance of whatever the goal or the energy or the relationship is? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. It's so true that we can, when we take the opportunity to really look inward, to look deep and be honest with ourselves, anything can shift, anything can happen. Like, and I love that analogy too, like the barricade. It's true.
Yeah.
We have like our little barricades, like, oh, I'm never going to open that door. Because if I open that door, my true health might be behind it. I might feel better.
Yeah.
I'll close that
Yeah.
one. So it's like
Or
interesting.
I'll crack it.
Right. Just a
I'll just
little
I'll
bit.
just see. I'll just not really try. Like I'll try a little bit. If something can come through the crack, that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
sneaks through.
Mm.
Yeah, it's such a great analogy because we create these barriers of protection around ourselves in a way that we think that we're protecting ourselves, but don't actually. It prohibits us, right, from then moving further down that life of trueness about what we're really meant to do and to have fun on the planet for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Novalee. It's been such a joy to have you. I learned so much about numerology. One last question as we're like wrapping up today. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do with that money to make the biggest impact on the planet right now?
I would make school and education in the US free.
That would be so great. I know
Yeah, I
that
would.
needs to
Yeah,
happen. That needs to happen. I
yeah.
think I can see. I've seen that one in the play. I think it should totally be free. Wouldn't it change everything about how?
It would
Yeah.
change everything, and also people's idea about like what to pursue, and also to pursue something new. If
Hmm.
whatever they did for X amount of years is no longer the thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I personally have so much medical debt. I just like put it up on a shelf. Like, I hope it just
Yeah,
disappear one
yeah. I mean, because
day.
instead of erasing all debt, I would rather change the system that creates it. I mean,
Right.
in Denmark,
Yes.
you are
Yes.
paid to go to school.
Yeah.
So that whole approach to like the most valuable thing we have are the minds of tomorrow.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, and that goes for like everywhere in the world. The most important thing is like the education.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And then
yeah,
people would
you're going to
pursue
make
what
more
they want
money,
to
you're going to
do.
make the world a better place, you're
Mhm.
going to be more educated, you're going to be able to think critically,
Yeah.
you're going to able to you're going to know how to find the sources and not just believe what you read on Facebook.
Right. Yeah. You'll
Yeah,
take power for your own education and the outcome. Hmm.
yeah, and understand yourself in the bigger scheme of things.
Right.
Like we are not just living one generation at a time. We are living, in a link of the people who came before us.
Hmm. Yeah,
And also, I
exactly.
mean, like I looked into certain things that I did not know about my family during the Second World War. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, I understand also what, like the trauma in my genes, the
Mhm.
experiences, why people, even when they later had more safety and more money and more opportunities, still acted like
Mhm.
there was a shortage on soap,
Right.
or
Yeah.
like a shortage on something where I'm like, we are no longer living there.
Right.
And instead of judging them, I now understand like that was the life they
That
lived.
was the mindset. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. That can happen. Let's focus on that. Let's manifest that one. That's a great one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so great, Novalee. How can people find out about your amazing book? Let's talk about that as we're wrapping up today. Where to find you, about your book, how they can contact you and learn more about numerology.
Yes. So if numerology is interesting to you, and I really hope that if you've listened to this episode, you've gotten a little inspired, I wrote a book called A Little Bit of Numerology. It's available everywhere online in your local bookstore. I have a podcast called The Numerology Podcast, and I have a website, novaleewilder.com, where I do have like a little intro to numerology. So if you sign up for my newsletter, you can learn about the 9 base number, figure out like who you are, and maybe look up your high school crush or your family, because that's also interesting. And then we have people to assign to the numbers. That's usually helpful, like, oh, my dad is a 9, he
Right.
acts like that makes sense. And so that's a way. And I'm also on all the social media things, all the platforms
Right.
as Novalee Wilder, if you want to follow and get some numerology magic in your feed.
Great. That's awesome. Okay, we'll make sure we put that all in the show notes so everyone can find you. And thanks again for taking your time today. It was such a joy to meet you, and I learned so much.
Thank you so much.